Yup, that's me. You're probably wondering how I got into this situation. Though actually, maybe not. If you played Splatoon 3 recently, you've probably gone through a similar situation to this. And when that's the case, you think to yourself, man, Trizuka is such a fair and balanced special. You're not alone in this one. There's many things in this game that could use some adjustments. Ask anyone that regularly plays the game, and they can name a lot of things they would like to see changed. So today, with the help of Cal, we're going to discuss what our ideal Splatoon 3 patch would be if we had any control over the balancing. If you're getting deja vu over me doing this in the past, no you're not. Before getting started though, we gotta set some ground rules. We're allowed to do big changes and overhauls to weapons, but we can't outright remove them as much as some players would like. We can't adjust weapon kits either. They must remain what they are. Most of the changes were ideas that Kel and I had, but some of them were ideas that came from me asking on Twitter for what people would want, though with some adjustments. And credits will be given what it's due. We'll be going over main weapons, certified weapon class, then subs, then special, then a points for special landing ground, and some other bonus changes after that. Subscribe if you enjoy, and let's get started. Beginning with the shooter class, it's not nearly as broken as it once was, since other options have caught up to it, so no universal changes, but a few of them need some addressing. First off, the 52 gal. Its whole gimmick is that it's strong but unreliable, except for some reason, it takes a long time for RNG to really kick in for it. So, we're adjusting the curve a bit, making it take 4 shots to reach minimum accuracy instead of 8. The first 2 shots should still be reliable, and the third isn't that bad either, but anything after that will be a struggle. Speaking of RNG, Splattershot Nova is infamous for its RNG being pretty bad, so we're helping with reducing its spread by 20%. I get it's not supposed to be a fighting weapon, but for its range and damage, it shouldn't be this bad. And RNG reduction doesn't stop there. L3 Nozzles is the only semi-automatic shooter with RNG when jumping. Why? We're doing away with that, it's done. The bigger Nozzle Nose, H3 Nozzle Nose, doesn't have the same issue, but it's just too slow to work in the current meta, and the kits don't give it much help. So we're gonna make it a little bit faster by shaving off 6 frames of its end lag. That way, after a trigger pull, it's able to get back in action a little bit quicker. The last semi-auto is also the most infamous one, Squeezer. People have been begging for nerfs on this one, for good reason, but Nintendo has delivered a ton, and we don't want to overdo it here. Its paint is already bad, and reducing its damage would kill the weapon, so we decided to target the mobility. It strafes pretty fast for what it can do, so we decided to nerf it by 15%. It's still fast, but it will have a harder time keeping up. Along the way, for the sake of accessibility, we decided to rework how it changes its shot types. Now, if you double tap CR, then you can hold it to get a perfect rhythm on the tap shots. Let go and press it again, and you'll go back to paint mode. That way, it reduces hand fatigue. Save this shooter for last, since it's the first Twitter suggestion to make it in. Splattershot Pro is already in a pretty okay spot due to recent buffs, so one last change should help it get picked more. My friend Mutt suggested to increase the shot velocity to match Nautilus, but we think that's a little bit too ridiculous, so we made it slightly slower. It still rewards aim more than prediction, and if you're good enough with that, you can get picks left and right with this, but it's not overkill since it doesn't have a charge time to hold it back. Going to my favorite weapon class, the rollers, and tell me, if you played rollers, how many times have you flicked into someone's direction only for there to be a hole in your ink and your enemy not take any damage at all? Happens a lot because rollers have flick RNG for some strange reason. We're removing that. All roller flicks will work similar to how NG describes it in this tweet, though the edges on the sides will still be sour spot that deal less damage and will never kill in one shot. Adding to it, the recent patch gave Carbon the ability to do 50 and 100 damage from a little further away, and while V-Roller doesn't need that, the other 3 could use some changes in that department. Flingsta's 100 damage hitbox will get a 5% range increase, and Dynamo's 100 damage hitbox will get a 10% range increase. For what the weapons do, the kill range is a little bit on the sad side, so a bit of an increase helps. But we're not done with Dynamo. Its vertical flick is infamously one of the worst moves in the game, and while it does get value in more ways than people realize, it really makes no sense that it bottoms out at 40 damage, so we're increasing the minimum to 70 damage. It sounds like a lot, but it takes 61 frames to come out, and stuff like E-Leader can one-shot from even further away without being that much slower, so we think it's fine. We're also making it do 220 damage instead of 180 at point blank and while rolling. Squid Roll can carry it a bit too easily, But if you get that point blank of a dynamo flick and you let it flick, then you deserve it. The real winner here is the object damage buff though. The heavy roller should be able to melt objects fast. And lastly, Swig. It doesn't one-hit KO, and it shouldn't, but its max damage range is also pretty bad. It will now be able to do its max of 80 damage from 20% further away. Wait, 80 damage? Yup, we're buffing that too. Not a kill, but it helps combo with more stuff, including something that we're gonna mention later.
Next up, we have the chargers. First and foremost, we're making Squiffer a lightweight to fuel into its mobility better. It also lost a lot with the loss of MPU, so we're increasing its range by around 5%. This way, the weapon's a little less committal, and you're less likely to die from a missed shot. Time to talk about Pencil. The weapon's been dominant in the meta due to being a good fill for both the backline and support role. We still want it to be good, just not dominant, so we're making one significant change. It always seemed weird to us that it has around the same damage range as Splatter Scope, but the painting range similar to E-Leader, so we're bringing both of them down. Pencil's painting and damage range now matches Hydra Splatling. This way, it's easier for other blacklines to get in range to take it down, and it reels back the cooler spam too, all while keeping its flexibility to fill both roles at the same time. Finally, we have GooTuber. Like Squiffer, we changed its weight class to a lightweight. That alone, however, won't be enough to save this poor weapon. We're giving it two changes that utilize the weapon's gimmick. First, let GooTuber throw subs without losing his charge. It gives the weapon a bit more of its own identity. The second one is a bit interesting though. If you hold a charge, it'll progressively swim faster, with the final result scaling based on how long you've charged the GooTuber for. At max charge, it's 1.5 times faster than your normal swim speed. That way, you're encouraged to use the weapon's gimmick more and have a reliable way to get into good positions. The weapon would be probably still not good, but it would at least make it more fun. Going over my favorite weapon class, we have blasters. It's understandable why Intensify Action scales worse with the class since directs are fairly powerful, but it really shouldn't be as big of an investment as is. So, blasters will have the scale adjusted, not to match shooters, but pretty close to it. Poor Clash Blaster. The weapon's been in the dumps since Splatoon 2, but casuals struggle fairly badly against it, hence why it gets little to no buffs. We propose that Clash directs do 70 damage, so one direct and an indirect is enough to kill. It won't change too much at lower levels, and with the 4% mobility buff it got recently, it might be able to combo itself more reliably. Going over brushes, the first change is universal. We're giving them the same change that we did for Squeezer. Double tapping then holding will give mashing shots, then letting go and tapping again will put you into roll mode. It's not as necessary for Octobrush and Paintbrush, but if we're going to give it to Inkbrush, we may as well give it to the other two. Speaking of those other two, they're getting the same permanent ink resistance that Inkbrush has. Why do they not have this already? Who knows? We're not done with Paintbrush though. The windup of that weapon is a bit too slow for what it does, so we're decreasing that by a whole 10 frames, or 1/6 of a second. Still on the slower side, but now a lot more bearable. Time for sloshers. We mainly got minor changes with this class. First of all, we are going to reduce the 5-frame nerf that Machine got a while back, which was overkill, and reduce its end lag by 3 frames. It won't be a menace anymore, but we can at least let it feel better. Bloblobber has a pretty unhealthy design at the moment. Its playstyle is to just sit back, spam blobs to paint the map, and throw their special out. So, to make it better at combat, we're increasing its shot velocity by 10%. That way, it's easier to hit people with it, but we're going to nerf its paint by 5% to discourage the quote-unquote AFK gameplay. Explosher is a healthier anchor bucket, but it can seriously struggle against backlines and specials like Inkjet, so it's also getting a shot velocity increase, though only by 5% this time, just so it's not totally screwed against its bad matchups. Splatlings, for the most part, are in an okay spot. There's only 2 Splatlings that we want to address. First is Mini, joining the ranks of the lightweight class. Other than that, Mini's in a good spot. Now, our real target here is Hydra. It has the longest charge time of any weapon, and any sort of displacement ruins its charge instantly. So, to compensate, the weapon now has a specialized charge hold, which you can only use before you start shooting. Here's the catch. Your charge hold will actually start to deplete when you're submerged in your ink, losing it 3 times faster than it takes to charge up. This way, minor displacements are not going to outright kill your charge, but you can't just move up with a full charge either.
Going into dualies, we once again don't have that many issues. The worst dualies, Dapples, are actually pretty good main weapons that just have kit problems, but their short dodge rolls can be both a blessing and a curse depending on the situation. So, why not give it a third dodge roll? We've seen this idea fly around a lot, but got a reminder of it thanks to this one tweet. This allows the speedy 2 rolls to remain an option, but get a third roll for extra distance in situations that need it. Tethers are another dolly that could get a small touch-up since it lost its niche thanks to Cooler being good. We'll get to Cooler later, but for now, we throw a bone to Tethers and make it a lightweight. It is meant to be a mobile dolly after all. The other dolly we want to address here is the dolly Sculptures, and we're going to give it a similar buff to the one that Dowsers got recently. Dodge rolls will now cost 6% of your ink tank instead of 8, and your shots will be 5% more efficient. We actually listed Dowsers for a similar change right before we got the patch notes for 8.1.0, which was a pleasant surprise when they dropped. Ah, Brellas. Formerly the worst class in the game, now a surprisingly competitive class, especially since the recent shield fits. I still cannot believe that happened. That said, some changes still need to happen. First of all, Stringers of Platanas have an insane object multiplier on these. It's okay for them to be strong, but this is a little ridiculous. We're bringing that down by 40%. Staying on the Stringer matchup, there's this annoying thing where your shield can move past the Stringer's arrow planted on the ground, allowing you to get hit on the other side. Yeah, that's gonna remove too. If a Stringer arrow on the ground gets touched by a Brella shield, it will explode instantly, similar to Rainmaker shots. Even with all this, there's been a lot of inconsistencies when it comes to splatting people, so all Brellas will have a damage buff of some kind. For Splat Brella and Tent, it's just reverting the Splatoon 2 nerfs. So Splat Brella will do 9 damage mats again, allowing it to be significantly more reliable at killing, and 10 will do 122.5 damage at mats, which helps a lot more with objects than actually killing, but it helps in that too. For Undercover, damage is increased to 45, allowing it to combo 2 shots and a shield bump for a Splat. 10 will also get a 50 HP increase on its shield, from 700 to 750, which doubles after a launch. The loss of MPU really affected this weapon badly, and there's a lot more stuff to counter it nowadays, so it's fair to make it a bit sturdier. Recycle is gonna get a bit more help than this though. Buffing its max damage to 95 from 90 is a start, and so it's making it a lightweight weapon. Seriously, why is it not lightweight? But it needs one more touch. So now, the weapon will have 5 less frames of end lag on its shots, allowing it to move faster and fight better. It's supposed to be a really aggressive Brella with a really fast but terrible shield, so buffing the good part of it to make it more worth picking seemed reasonable. We talked about Stringers not too long ago, so may as well get some changes in them too. For Tri-Stringer, come on, it's been 2 years and it still can't paint a damn line? This is ridiculous at this point, make it consistent, please! We're also reducing the spread of the arrows at full charge by 5%, making it easy to one-shot opponents. But the line, dude. Reflux is such a cool weapon, held back by a lot of factors. Mainly the kits, but we can't really change those, so may as well target another area, like the lack of range. We're increasing it just a little bit, about 5%, to let it be a bit more competitive against short-range weapons. And Wallstring, no kid on the block, has been causing some headaches to people, even if its ability isn't that good, but like 11 fully charged shots on a full tank with no sabers, and no wide frames either. 11! Yeah, no, we're destroying this thing's ink efficiency. The variability isn't great, but this thing is annoying to deal with and very unhealthy. We're making its shots 30% more expensive and giving it 15 wide ink frames. But to compensate, the first swing of challenge will have 10% more range, so its one shot can be a bit more reliable from further away. Last weapon class, the Splatanas. Stamper is arguably the best weapon in the game right now, but it's also a really cool one, so we don't want to destroy it. Its range and charge slashes is a little bit ridiculous though, so we're reducing that by about 3%. Very minor, but helps you with it a little better. And another one, the Cavitator. A slow sword with a pretty far dash and a crazy hitbox. Little too crazy honestly. So we're reducing its size by about 5%, but we're increasing its dashing speed by about 5%. Its distance, range and charging speed won't change, just the dash itself will be faster. This way, it's gonna have a slightly easier time getting the jump from people, but you will have to aim a little better for it to work out. With the main weapons out of the way, it's time to talk about sub-weapons. And I'll be honest, there's a lot of misconceptions about sub-weapons, to the point where I made an entire video about it, including changes to said subs. Going through them fast, we got Curling costs 55% of your ink tank, Sensor Mark's main weapon, the Line of Dark deals 20 damage, which allows you to combo with the 80 damage swing now, Sprinkler modes are reversed, starting at 2 then going into 1, Paint radius is bigger, and you get an indicator when it's destroyed. Physic costs 65% of your ink tank, and bombs get about 5 more wide ink frames. If you want more details, I recommend checking out that video. I go into a lot of detail in there. If you watched that video, however, you may have noticed that I didn't mention toxic mist just now, despite being in that video. The changes I listed then still apply, being that the effect lasts about a second after you leave it and it costs 55% of your ink tank. But I got a very interesting comment saying that it should drain part of your ink tank when it hits you. Adjusted the concept a little bit, and now you will instantly lose 15% of your ink tank if you are hit directly with the sub. Rewards good aim with it while allowing it to do more that stays true to the sub's abilities without being too broken.
If you thought that the main weapon changes were a lot, you're not ready for the special weapon changes. This is the area where most of the issues with game balance lie, and most of them are really close to being good. It's a lot of small adjustments, and a few big ones too, so let's get to it! Getting the simple ones out of the way first, we're going to start with a minor change. Booyah Bomb's armor will slowly decay if you hold it in the air for 3+ seconds. This is to prevent stalling with it, which isn't too broken, but it incentivizes the user to throw it as soon as possible. Here's a fun fact. Special power-up makes Inkstorm travel further, but in return the paint output is worse. As a result, it's almost never worth running. We are going to fix that. Kraken's another special that isn't too broken, but is kind of annoying to go against, so we propose a trade-off. You now take 30% more knockback regardless if you're charging or not. However, your swim speed will be increased by 15% when you're not charging. It encourages you to be more unpredictable without charge attacks. It's not fun when triple ink strike melts you if you slightly graze it, and that was patched in pretty early into the game. We're weakening its damage towards players to what it was at launch, but its damage to objects will remain what it is for the most part. It's a bit too extreme on Bubble though, so we're nerfing that by around 20%. It still counters Bubble, but to a lesser degree. The triple splashdown is fun and all, but the outside hitbox really should do 70 damage like it did in Splatoon 2. It would help combo a lot with the main weapons it's on. However, the fists will not spawn until you're already up in the air, meaning that if you get splatted in the first couple frames, no fists will come out. This discourages panic splashdowns, but any other regular cancels still have the fists to deal with. Inkvac will now be stupid fucking flies. Anyways, Inkvac will now be able to switch to shooting mode by pressing R if it is at least 40% charged, but the shot will take 45 frames, or 3/4 of a second to ready up. Therefore, you're not as vulnerable for long in the Inkvac, and can shoot whenever you feel like is most optimal. The biggest rework here is Splatter Color Screen. We're not directly changing its viability, we're just addressing the ableist aspect of the special. First off, the brightness will no longer be a thing. It will be given a proper grayscale that looks just like the one in the Switch's system settings. However, you will have splatters of ink all around your screen, similar to the blooper in Mario Kart. The sound will also be muffled instead of whatever the original sound is. Seriously, what is this? They should make the special less of a real-life hazard for people affected by it, while also preventing people who are not physically affected from just running into it for fun, giving screen a proper drawback. The meta special that everyone likes, Tacticooler. We're keeping this a top tier, just making it a bit less ridiculous. It will now only save 75% of your special instead of the entire 100%. This change will make games and comebacks a bit less special spammy. We're also giving a bit more counterplay. You'll now be able to break the cooler stand. It will have 500 HP, meaning you can't just throw it out in the open unless your entire team is there. One other change, the location of where the Tacticooler is placed will also show up on the minimap, which would be useful for when you respawn. And now, the special you've all been eagerly waiting for, Trizuka. Surely by now you've seen the handful of complaints surrounding Trizuka and its capabilities, both from people against it and people using it, since Lottery Zuka is still very much a thing. We're making 3 big key changes here. First is the obvious, giving it the Splatoon 1 startup. Being able to instantly pop your Zuka is dumb, and we all know it. Second of all, the AoE hitbox is what really annoys people, so we're reducing the size of it by 20%. It's still going to two-shot you, but the hitbox being smaller and the startup time should make it a lot more bearable. We will be throwing in a fix, however, which is removing the blind spot in the center of the Zuka direct shot. That should hopefully fix Lottery Zuka while keeping its problematic aspects in check. Now for some big buffs. Here's Ultra Stamp. Please, just let it protect you from the front. Decrease the AoE hitbox all you want, 20% is a good fit, but for the love of God, let it protect you from the front. With Reef Slider, you might just think to remove the end lag. Nah, we're decreasing the end lag by half, 14 frames, but also adding another function. You can now turn slightly while you're moving. It will reduce your travel distance a bit if you do so, though. That way, your slide is significantly less predictable, you might catch a few more unsuspecting players, and it'd just look really cool to see the inflatable shark Tokyo drift around the map. Wavebreaker might have the biggest change here though. The waves will actually be, proper waves and start very high up, enough to be unable to jump over them from ground level. However, they'll slowly shrink in size the further they go out. Special power-up will make the shrinking more drawn out until the end. This also means that it can reach higher or lower elevations than before, though the waves will be shorter if it goes there. The breaker itself will also have its HP increased from 450 to 600. Wavebreaker's biggest problem currently is that it doesn't do all that much as a threat when you set it down, so making the waves something you actually have to deal with makes it significantly more competitive. And the HP increase allows you to throw it in riskier locations without running the risk of it getting shredded as quickly.
Now we got the specials out of the way, let's do a quick lightning round on points for special changes. First, there's some solid main weapons with decent specials, but can't paint well in the substance help. Custom Blaster, Rapid Blaster Pro, and Tri-Slasher. They're all going down to 170p. Next, a bunch of weapons that don't really make sense to have on 200p, going down to 190. H3D, No Squiffer, both Go-Tuber kits, Dually Squelchers, Dark Tetras, Darcy Dualies, and Splatterla. Following up, a few weapons are actually really good, but just don't have the special output to be competitive. Rapid Deco, Tri-Nouveau, Gold Nut, CDS, and Reflux, all going down from 210 to 200. The only two weapons to have 220p in the game really don't need that anymore. Enough nerfs have hit Machine and Squeezer in this hypothetical video, and bringing them down to 210p seems fair. Last buff here, Recycled Barrel Mark II. This thing gets like 2 splashes per game, and it's honestly kinda depressing. The only 20-point jump in here, this thing is going down from 200p straight to 180p. Alright, thanks for some nerfs. First are some weapons that had good points for special total, but got buffed for no reason. Orange Sap, Jet Squelcher, Gold Aerospray, and Neo Splash. They all require 10 less points than they used to at one point. We're reverting those. It's especially a big deal for Neo Splash, since its playstyle is strike spam, but that needs to be toned back. Some others that were always at their point total but never made sense, Seajet and T-Tech. Seajet could be too special spammy at times, and T-Tech I still don't understand how it's 190p the whole game. We're also throwing Foes, Quizzer, and Custom Wallstring there, since we just reworked / buffed their specials, as well as Custom Range Blaster, which I'm shocked still is 200p. We're giving all of these extra 10 points.
That was a lot. Let's go over something that has nothing to do with specials. Abilities. First off is Thermal Ink, with some changes that really should have been in the game in the first place. That dumb distance limitation Thermal Ink has is gone. It now works regardless of distance. Additionally, it even works on indirect hits, like from blasters, stringers, etc. It still will be limited to only main weapons, however. Respawn Punisher. It's not broken, but easily the least fun ability in the game because you just play the game less. Let's rework that. It no longer increases respawn time, but it reduces mobility and ink efficiency for 20 seconds upon respawning, with how much you lose depending on who splats who. 5% if you're splatted by a Punisher user, 10% if you get splatted as a Punisher user, and 15% if you're both using it. This still keeps Respawn Punisher impactful, but at least you can play the game now. Cooler also won't nullify it. Surprised to see salmon stuff here? Well, there's a select few weapons that could use some help to be better and not be an insta-turn-off when seeing their rotations. These are mostly going to be damage buffs, so it's going to be a rapid-fire kind of thing. One thing I want to note before the damage buffs, Tetrals will now have less end lag on dodge rolls, making it comparable to Glue Gun. This is exclusively Salmon Run only though. Nova and Dually Squelchers will go up from 30 to 45 damage per bullet. H3 will go from 70 damage to 80 damage. Carbon will go from 160 to 200 on flicks. Ink Brush from 36 to 45. V-Roller and Flingza 200 to 250. Bamboozler 160 to 200 on charge shots. And the biggest change, Go-Tuber will go from 300 damage to 600 damage on charge shots. For how long that charges, it should be deadly like E-Meter. God save this weapon. All of these are just to help the weapons feel a tiny bit better without feeling too overpowered.
Lastly, we got some miscellaneous changes that don't really fit any previous category. First, we're going to improve Squid Surge. The biggest problem with it is that there's not many spots to use it on due to the map design, which is outside of the scope of this video, but I made a video about this very topic not too long ago if you're interested. Aside from that, it's just too slow. So we're shaving off 10 frames off of it when you don't have Intensify action. But the curve will be adjusted so that with maximum Intensify action it is unchanged. One thing I never noticed before is that charging weapons don't actually let you see your reticle until you started charging. Thanks Gabe for pointing this out, and now I can't unsee it. Yeah, let's fix that too. Swapping gear for cash in Salmon was very nice in Splatoon 2, despite money really not being an issue, and would have been really nice to have in this game where money is an issue, so we're adding that in. Good Buddy Solar had a big list of stuff here, but we're going to be bringing up only the ones we agree with and or haven't been mentioned or patched already. For starters, L3 and H3 should just be able to hold CR to keep shooting. Still have the same cooldown, but now you don't need to match it. You should be able to buffer a bubble place in midair. Not use the bubble in midair, but make it so that if you press it in the air, it will activate the moment you land. That'll just be nice. You know how holding R shows a line with certain subs to show the arc of the sub? Or the straight line in the case of Dart? Why doesn't Splash Wall have that? They should give that to Splash Wall. One more purely quality of life change. Let us switch our species and other features on the menu instead of only a select few. Would be very nice to not have to go through the whole new game loading screen every time. Save this big change for last, since in regards to tricolor battles. It's very nice that they changed the system in December of 2022 to allow people to actually play the mode and experience it from all sides, but I wasn't really a fan of it being random which team you get to be on. So now, picture this. Your team is set to be defending for 2 hours on every match outside of mirrors. Then the next 2 hours a different team is set to defend and it cycles every 2 hours until the splash phase is over. That way, you can still experience all sides, but have better preparation for your actual fights, since many weapons are good on one side and bad on another. Unsure how much this would help this late into the game, but it will be neat if they ever bring this idea back. Anyways, that's it for this video, and wow! This ended up being a much bigger scope than I anticipated it would be. Despite everything, we're pretty happy with the game's current meta. It's just that there's a few nagging details that get in the way, and there's a lot to cover when it comes to said details. As a bit of a bonus, we wrote our patch ideas the day before the patch notes for 8.1.0 were released, and we have to remove/rearrange a lot. We nailed S-Blast fire rate buff, we were pretty close on Dowser's ink efficiency buff, Better Shields actually got fits, which is insane. Super Chomp's half a second explosion is half the time we thought about, and Kraken got 170p. Pretty crazy to be honest. Once again, big shoutouts to Cal for helping out with the production of this video, as well as all of these people for helping record things and giving ideas. Do you agree with our changes, or is there anything you would have done differently? Let us know in the comments. Like the video if you enjoyed it, thank you all so much for watching, and take care.